Yet another week has passed and yet another NFL video is being posted. We've got a really weird week to talk about, so let's head right into it. Alright, let's start off with the headlines first. The Broncos have the weirdest games in the league, by far. Let's look at their games. The first game against the Titans was way closer than it needed to be. Then they lost to the Colts narrowly by a leverage penalty. And then they lost to the Chargers 20-23, which is a pretty standard game for their standards. Then the very next game, they blow out the Bengals, and then out of nowhere, comeback versus the Eagles, who were undefeated at the time. They're looking pretty good. Then they then they narrowly beat the Jets 13-11 in an international game. What? And then the very next game, look at this. Look at this. How does that happen? And then the very next game, they blow out the Cowboys. Then they narrowly beat the Texans. And then they narrowly beat the Raiders. This is the most up and down team that is still in Juggernaut tier that I've ever seen. Our next headline is we now have another 19-point comeback. How? If you did not know, the Texans completed a 29-10 comeback to make it a 32-33 point game, with their starting quarterback being Davis Mills. I have no clue how this happened. I have no clue how the Jaguars' clutch factor suddenly died out and transferred over to the Texans, and that is the second 19-point comeback we've had in the fourth quarter. This isn't even from like halftime or from like a first quarter domination and then an injury. No, the fourth quarter where something randomly turned on, and now a team is back from a near insurmountable deficit. How does this keep happening? Again, this season is weird. Next, Brian Daboll is gone. What now? See, there have been some great quarterbacks that have been coached under Brian Daboll. Josh Allen when Brian Daboll was coaching the Bills. Daniel Jones while he was coaching the Giants. And now Jackson Dart. However, it's more of a sign that Brian Daboll is extremely lucky than he is talented. Because Josh Allen turned out to be one of the greatest quarterbacks in the league, and Daniel Jones is having a breakout year on his first year without Brian Daboll. And Jackson Dart, he seems to be a very good quarterback, but he's just not being used very well. Now that Brian Daboll is gone, they have much more options to get a quarterback that will actually use Jackson Dart's strengths, that will be able to keep the rest of his team available throughout the year. We'll have to see who they pick up. Next, primetime sucked this week. First game, Raiders at Broncos. That one was not good whatsoever. However, it was funny, so that makes it the best out of the bunch. The next was the Steelers at the Chargers, and that one sucked. The Chargers just immediately got ahead and just didn't make it competitive at all. And then the very next one was Eagles at Packers, where only 17 points were scored, and it was 10-7 once again. Only the Eagles won it, and there was no touchdowns until the fourth quarter, and only 3 points before that. Yeah, primetime been good up until this point, but maybe it's falling off now. And finally, our main headline is the power of special teams is returning. I was looking at the top 15 plays in the NFL this week, and a good portion of them were special teams. In fact, the Jets, even though Justin Fields only threw for 53 yards on 6 completions, got 24 points. How, you might ask? It was because they had 2 return kicks / punts for touchdowns, and Breece Hall just carried it the rest of the way for the other one. That is insane, and they were back-to-back on top of that. The Browns' special teams are really bad, but at least the Jets are able to capitalize off of that, and they were able to win because of that. Alright, next is our Week 10 awards. Our most improved team is easily the Detroit Lions. After that giant win over the Commanders, they're starting to gain a lot more momentum on offense after that brutal loss to the Chiefs a few weeks back. The biggest decline is the Buffalo Bills. Last week I predicted them to win the Super Bowl, and then they lost to the Miami Dolphins 13-30. Even on the road, this should never happen for any Super Bowl contender ever. Our biggest surprise is the Houston Texans after getting a 19-point comeback with Davis Mills. I already talked about this earlier, but it's still insane to me. Game of the week is the Patriots and the Buccaneers. This was really just a game of 2 really good teams facing off against each other, and overall the better team coming out victorious. There wasn't a ton of really good games aside from the Jaguars and Texans game, but that one was really only in the fourth quarter, while this was the entire game. The snoozer of the week was easily Eagles and Packers. MVP is Jonathan Taylor after getting 244 yards and a trio of touchdowns to win the game versus the Atlanta Falcons. He is my current MVP for the year right now because, dude, this is better than the Saquon Barkley year last year, and he lit it up. The clutch quarterback of the week is Davis Mills. I don't really have to talk about this much more. Surprise player of the week was Tyler Shook after getting 280 yards on offense. I think he had a pretty good, basically debut game, even though he did play a couple games before this. This is his first one where he really played well, and yes, it was against the Panthers defense, but still a good game nonetheless. And miss of the week was Justin Fields. The team won in spite of him, and I really had high hopes for him this year, but he's just not living up to the hype. Our Super Bowl prediction this week is a vintage prediction, the Seahawks over the Patriots. And I'm saying this just because the Seahawks offense is incredible, and their defense is really starting to show out as well. And while the Patriots are also really good and probably have the most momentum out of any team, they just don't have as much experience as some of these other players. Our play of the week is Jonathan Taylor's 80-yard touchdown after getting out of a giant block and running out to the side. He got a few good blocks with his offense and then ran all the way down. It was an incredible play. Our blooper of the week was Jacoby Brissett's first quarter and first minute of the second quarter, because he made a pretty big mistake where he tried to throw while he was being pressured by the defensive line. Yes, the offensive line didn't do well on that play. The coverage wasn't great, and he just tried to panic and it didn't work. Bad play, but you can always recover from that later. And then he makes the same mistake again in the same way, and it results in a scoop and score both times. Sometimes I question why I'm a fan of this team. Alright, next is our tier list. Starting in Super Oof tier, we have the Titans, Browns, Raiders, and Jets. No new teams, just teams that have left. Oof tier, which consists of the falling Cardinals, Giants, rising Saints, rising Dolphins, Falcons, Bengals, cold Jaguars, and falling Commanders. The reason why the Jaguars are cold is because even though they played a great 3 quarters, you couldn't finish it out, and you cannot let a 19-point lead slip even against a divisional rival, especially against a divisional rival. In mid-tier, we have the Texans, falling Steelers, Panthers, Cowboys, and falling Vikings. Nothing much to say here. In solitaire, we have the Niners and Packers, our smallest tier this season. And the reason why the Packers are cold is because, well, that game against the Eagles was horrible. In power teams tier, we have the Chargers, hot Bears, falling Bills, Ravens, and Buccaneers. The Bears, after 4 crazy come-from-behind wins in a row, I have to give in. They have a crazy clutch factor, and I cannot deny that anymore. In Juggernaut tier, we have the Lions, Eagles, Chiefs, Broncos, Rams, Colts, Patriots, and Seahawks. The Rams, even though they did not rise, they are hot because they had a really great game against the 49ers on the road, and I feel like they have a lot more momentum than, say, the Dolphins or the Saints. Next, we have our weekly predictions, starting with the easy games. As always, let's get the Patriots, Texans, Giants, Chargers, Ravens, and Cowboys out of the way. These games should be really easy. On the international game, we have the Commanders at the Dolphins. I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like the Commanders are way too injured to do anything. The Dolphins have a little bit more momentum on offense, although I could see this going either way. Sunday early games, let's start with the Panthers and Falcons. This one is also one I could see going either way, but I think the Panthers are just a bit more consistent against their own division. Next, we got the Buccaneers facing off a very, very angry Bills team. But the Buccaneers did put up a little bit more of a fight against the Patriots. I see them winning here, and I don't know. I just don't have enough faith in the Bills anymore after losing to the Falcons and the Dolphins. Next, we have the Bears and Vikings game. I feel like the Bears are going to be able to pull it out, even if they just don't have a very good start of the game. They're going to be able to pull it out as they have for the last month. Next, Bengals at Steelers. This is going to be another close game. AFC North games are always going to be able to go either way. But I'm going to take the Bengals because the Steelers just do not have enough momentum to really do anything. And the thing about them is that they really like to lose to the worst teams and just play up to the best teams. I think the Bengals will be able to pull it out. In the Sunday late games, starting with the Seahawks and the Rams, one of the most important games of the season thus far, I think I'm going to take the Rams to take it at home, barely. I could see this going either way, like I have been saying for a lot of these other games. Rams at home, it's going to be a bit more of an intense environment for Seattle. Next, the Niners at the Cardinals. Cardinals are going to be mad after they lost that last game. And again, it's a divisional matchup, so it could go either way, but I'm going to take the 49ers simply because Christian McCaffrey is balling out. In the Chiefs at Broncos game, this is very important to see if the Broncos will be able to hold on to their division, and I'm going to take them in this game simply because I think they'll be able to use their clutch factor that they have been developing this year to beat out the Chiefs, who haven't really had much of that. On Sunday Night Football, I'm going to take the Lions because they've just been able to outpace their opponents every week on offense, and I feel like the Eagles just haven't been able to do that. They've been relying on their defense, so I'm going to take them here. Again, thank you for making it to the end of my video. If you've enjoyed it, please give me a like and subscribe. Hopefully this is coming out on time. I know I've been pretty inconsistent about that the last few weeks, but hopefully I'm getting back on track, and I will see you next time. See you guys.